Okay, hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to address the Yu-Gi-Oh! End of match procedure time controversies that have been discussed a little bit in the community lately. So this is something that honestly has been kind of an issue for a few years, and people have had like different takes on it. So I'm just throwing mine in the ring. And like what I think the maybe practical solutions could be, and just exploring all of that. So, as you guys know, the EU Nationals was like happened this past weekend, and a kind of big trend that we noticed was that some players were using certain cards that they were like siding in specifically in Game Three for like time being called, and time in Yu-Gi-Oh, like sort of the overtime thing, is a little bit different than other card games. So let's get into the fun of it. So the end of match procedures. This is from the official Yu-Gi-Oh policy document. Let's dig into this. So, sometimes a match will not be finished when the time ends for a round. If this happens, it's both duelist's responsibility to know whose turn it is when time is called. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit to this first rule. If time is called while a duelist in the middle of a game, the current game must have a decision: win, loss, or draw. What we're focusing on here is how end of match procedures work, which is step one. You continue with the current phase of the game. Once the phase is over, you stop the game. You determine a game winner at this point, with the duelist with the most life points winning the game. Now, this is. I don't even know where to start. So, if time gets called during my main phase, and you and I are playing, and time gets called during my main phase, then what ends up happening is I finish my main phase, and as soon as my main phase is done, whoever has most life points wins. So I won't even get a chance to do a battle phase. And that could also happen if it's like your turn, right? Like if time gets called during your main phase, you won't get to do a battle phase to like deal any damage or change anything. So the only thing that you could really do is have some sort of a burn effect to deal a little bit of life point damage to me, or even a life point gaining effect to gain a little bit of life points for yourself. So that way, when the phase ends, you will have more life points and be declared the winner. Otherwise, if our life points are the same, then we're just going to get a draw. Like if I won game one and you won game two and we're in game three, and time gets called and we both have 8,000 life points, and I managed to get to the end of my phase, but I don't have any way to deal any burn damage. We both have 8,000, and we both get a draw, and that can feel very anticlimactic. It can also feel very anticlimactic if, I had more life points than you, and time got called in your turn, and you had enough monsters on the board to like attack me for game or attack to get more damage to like have more life points than me, but you don't get to finish your main phase. So that's kind of tricky, and that's led to a lot of issues just like in general. Like I said, it feels kind of anticlimactic when one person wins this way. It also feels very anticlimactic when there's a draw this way. And it can also sometimes sort of encourage a sense of like slow playing. This is something that people talk about a lot, where if time is sort of running out on the clock, like it's not time yet, but if time is running out, one player might start to do their turn just a little bit slower and kind of, think a little bit longer or ask to read cards more because they're up in life points, and then they just let time get called. And once time gets called, there's really no recourse for their opponent. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but it's certainly something that like I've sort of encountered, and I've heard lots of players talk about this. So, yeah, that's sort of the situation with that. And we're gonna have to be fair here. There are reasons why these time procedures exist, because the old time procedures, these came into play in like 2018, these new ones. But the old time procedures had both players actually kind of playing some overtime turns. I think at high tier events like YCS events and things like that, it was 5 turns. So like let's say time ended in my turn, right? I'm turn 0, and then you get turn 1, and then I get turn 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And at the end of turn 5, whoever has the most life points wins if somebody didn't already just win outright in that time period. And I think like it was like 3 turns at like locals and stuff. Well, anyways, that was, I think, for the players probably considered a pretty good solution, right? It meant that, well, time gets called, but there's still enough time to continue to like play the match like normal and kind of like get what feels like a more valid result. However, it's not perfect because people would slow play a lot. And I don't mean slow play in a malicious way, but when there's that much pressure on, it means that it's kind of difficult to like make your decisions, and so every decision counts, and players could take a lot of time to just get through those 5 turns or those 3 turns. And that meant that the time between rounds, like when the 40 minutes ended, got very elongated, right? There might be 15 or 20 extra minutes of play just happening in just that one sort of overtime scenario. And this led to a lot of logistic issues because you don't want a regional or something to last until like 2 in the morning, because every round, instead of being 40 minutes, then getting to the next round pretty quickly, is now like taking 50, 60, plus minutes in addition to like the time that it takes to like enter all the results in the computer and then like print the next round. So I remember that this was like a real thing, regionals could take so long that it just, yeah. So, yeah, to get back to what I'm saying here though, uh, in this most recent YCS, people were playing cards like, where is she? Psychic Life Transfer. I should have had pulled up before now. This old Synchro monster that once returned, you can remove and play a Psychic monster from your grave to gain 1,200 life points. So you can play this in like Punks or really any number of things. A lot of decks play Psychic monsters now and gain 1,200. So even though you won't be getting a battle phase, you just needed to gain 1,200 life points to be higher than your opponent. And so this would work, and great. Also, people were playing Red Resonator, which has an effect where you can just target a face-up monster in the field and gain life points equal to its attack points, so that would put you above your opponent. And there are even archetypes nowadays that are just kind of designed with this in mind. I think Fluandereeze and the Advent of Adventure, their quick play spell, it gains 500 life points. For not really much of a reason, it would seem, but that definitely can help you in time. There's also some of the, what is it? The Sword Soul Chingling, or I don't know what it's called, but it gains like it burns your opponent for 1,200 life points. So even if you're doing your combo and like you know that you won't get to the battle phase, if you use that, then it's Ling Yong, I believe. It does 1,200 damage to your opponent, so you'll have more. These effects, I don't know if Konami designed them with this in mind. I would assume not, but the point is, it can kind of turn these late game scenarios into more of a race to deal more life point damage or gain life points to eke out that win instead of actually playing for the win itself. Now, an interesting tweet that I saw was from Jeff Jones, a very historically strong Yu-Gi-Oh player. So he was watching these feature matches, and I guess he was kind of critical of them. He says, for the first 2 turns of this feature match, it took 27 minutes. That's something we're getting into in a second. In 2 feature matches now, the commentators have spoke about how multiple players are citing life point gaining cards for time. When will they realize their rules are flawed at a fundamental level for how Yu-Gi-Oh plays? So I'm not, this is obviously sort of a heavily worded take on this. I'm not saying he's necessarily like completely right or wrong, but I do think that he raises some interesting points that are worth inspecting. The first is that modern Yu-Gi-Oh does take a lot of time. I'm not here to comment on whether or not these people were like slow playing or anything like that, but modern combos take a while, right? Like a lot of these turns, combos involve so much searching, so much special summoning from deck, which means a lot of like picking up the deck, looking through it, finding a card, setting it down, shuffling the deck, hand it to your opponent so that they can cut. And a lot of people have kind of expedited this process a bit where it's like, okay, I'm going to be going back in. So you'll cut your opponent's deck like at the end of their combo. But still, I mean, I think that shouldn't really have to be a thing, and that's already kind of like skirting the rules a little bit because you are supposed to offer your opponent a cut every single time. And then also, the cards have a lot of text. I've made videos about this pretty recently, where a lot of cards, just if you haven't encountered a certain card or an archetype before, then you might have to just read this stuff in the middle of the tournament, like for the first time. And Yu-Gi-Oh cards have lots of text, so it can take a lot of time to read things. It can take a lot of time to do combos. And that's to no fault of the players, I feel. So, now players are siding in cards that are specifically designed to help them win a game in time. Uh, Here's how I feel about this. I don't like that because I feel that it kind of is forcing or heavily encouraging players to make decisions in deck building or side deck building or whatever around like a tournament policy rather than the matchup itself. So you're not going to be like playing Psychic Life Transfer in most of your combos in any normal sense. That's not really how you're like learning to play the Punk deck, for instance. But the thing is, you are signing it in like in round 3 or whatever because of time. It's like, I don't know. I guess I don't like players feeling like they have to dedicate that space to it. And I guess the argument would be, well, you don't have to. You can just win fast enough. But clearly that's become sort of a recurring issue. So this isn't like a one-time thing. I, yeah, it's a tricky situation. And then also like there's so many other like factors that you can throw in here, like Mystic Mine being a thing where like some players don't want to, you know, scoop because they see Mystic Mine, so they'll like play it out, and like that can take a long time. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what the perfect solution is. I think it would be really nice for Konami to maybe change these policies to be like a finish the current turn and then play one more turn so that both players at least get to kind of have a more or less full turn to get a more conclusive result. So at least some battle phases get to happen and some more meaningful interactions get to happen. It's not just end of phase that feels so draconian and heavy-handed to me, and just anticlimactic. I think that going to 3 turns or 5 turns just seems like that's a little bit too much, and we know why logistically that just kind of can't work. But I think maybe getting like one extra turn would be nice. Or the alternative could be to increase the amount of time in each round. Right now, Yu-Gi-Oh rounds are still 40 minutes, but I think that 45 or maybe 50 minutes could be really cool. And they have explored this a little bit. I remember maybe the first major YCS back this year. It might have been one of the EU ones or something. They experimented with a 45-minute timer instead of a 40-minute timer, and I thought that that was a pretty neat experiment. I wasn't at one of the events where this happened, so I can't really speak to how much it changed the play experience, but I didn't hear any major complaints about it at least. I think 45 or 50 minutes could be pretty cool. I know that they've done like 45 or 50 minutes when there's like the team YCS events. So I have played in some of those, and that felt kind of nice because it sort of accommodates for the need to speak to your teammates. Um, so, that could be cool, like a little bit of a time extension. Even if you kept the same end of match procedures, it would at least allow like games to just kind of get a little more time to play out. Maybe that helps. And one other sort of relevant thing too, what was I gonna say, was that, oh yeah, I've played in remote duels, and in remote duel events they do have 50-minute timers. And so when I play in those, that tends to work out pretty well. I haven't had any like major issues with it. So yeah, uh, all in all, it's I don't want to say that the current time rules suck. Like I haven't fallen victim to them. They haven't, robbed me of like too much, but it seems like it is something that a lot of players are talking about. So hopefully Konami is inspecting this. Maybe the judges and the event organizers can find some sort of a better solution than what we have. If they don't, well, then I guess we'll be siding in cards to do burn damage or life point gain or whatever until the end of time, or at least until it changes. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about the time rules? Have they affected you personally? Do you think that they're perfect? What do you think would be a good solution? I will say real quick, because I know a lot of people are going to leave this in the comments, the sort of, I know some people want like kind of a turn clock, like a shot clock or a chess timer type of situation where like, you press this clock and like your turn starts. You have a 300-second time limit or something like that for your turn. That is not practical at all, because that means that you have to have all of these clocks at every table and every round, and like that's an expense that I don't think Konami or just like the people doing regionals and stuff can have. And also because Yu-Gi-Oh is a game where you can actually respond to your opponent, unlike something like chess, then it means like, okay, if I activate something, then my timer is going down. But then when you're thinking you might have a response, that means I have to stop my timer and start your timer, and that just feels very difficult to do. So I know a lot of people are going to say it, but I don't think that really works well for Yu-Gi-Oh. It works well in the simulators like Master Duel or EDO Pro or whatever, but not in real life. Sorry, I know, like, I don't think that's a bad idea in a vacuum, but just practicality, it seems hard. It seems hard to do. All right, that's going to be it. I've gone on long enough. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Fast turn.